Good morning, good afternoon, good night. Whatever time you're watching this, thanks for watching Common Sense Fishing. If you're watching this live, thanks for joining. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, liking, and also just leave a comment. It helps with the algorithm. And if you're one of my normal viewers or subscribers, commenting on the video helps a ton. But once it publishes and it goes on to my playlist and all that, commenting also helps getting the video out to more people. So I appreciate you guys very much. Thanks for watching. Sorry, just had a meeting with Casper, the friendly ghost, outside, so I'm a little bit short of breath. But anyways, I've got a great video for you guys tonight. We're going to be talking about fishing reports on the Delta, Don Pedro, New Melones, and we'll talk a little bit about Tulik and let you guys know, maybe a little bit about McClure, let you guys know what all my friends are catching them on, what we've been catching them on, the ups and downs, the good days and the bad days. Spawn has been real crazy this year, the start of it. There's been hot days where it's on fire, and then it just shuts down and gets brutally tough. Then it gets really good again. Then it gets really tough. So it's just the fish are going through lots of different stages right now. It's cool to watch it all play out. I did a tournament where me and my kids went. We had some issues. Live well broke again. This time pump was fine. Pump's pumping water into the live well. But when I went to pull the boat out the lake, all the water drained out. So the fish were flopping around. And I had to let them go at the dock. And I couldn't weigh them in. And we actually had probably like 7 or 8 pounds. I'd say 7.5, probably 7 pounds. For 3 fish. We had like a 2.5 in there, and a couple 2s, and almost a 3, like a 2.5, and then like a 2. So whatever. So like 7.25 maybe. And checks were getting cashed with 10 pounds. So if we could have got 2 more fish, we were in it. And we were on a school of 4 to 5 pounders. So if you're local, I'm going to tell you where there's a school of big fish right now. And there was one that I believe is a double digit. It was hard to see. They're sitting, at least for me, the day I was there, they're sitting in that zone where they're just out of eyesight. At least a lot of the bigger ones are. So some of the smaller fish are right up there, shallow in 2-3 feet of water or even a foot of water. And you've got anything from little dinky males that are 10 inches, 12 inches to about 2 to 3 pounders max. And they're sitting in the shallow. Some of them are already paired up. There's some beds up shallow, but the lake level's been rising. So the fish are, some of them made beds in 2 to 3 feet water, and now those beds are in 10 feet of water. And a lot of those fish are staying on those beds, or they're moving up and they have to make new beds all over again. So they're going through all these crazy stages that's just really affecting them. And it's pretty cool to see. So like I said, we'll talk about that some more. We'll talk about Pedro. We're going to tell you guys where I found a grouping of them. I couldn't get them to bite. I spent too much time on them. So in hindsight, you guys will have that video coming soon. I spent too much time on this group of fish. And my kids weren't able to utilize fishing because we were just trapped in an area and they were kind of bored because they like to move a little bit. And I think I was too close to them and also the wind was pushing into that area. It was fairly windy, and there were some calm moments and then some very windy moments, right? And when there was wind, even light or medium, it was most of the time, for our luck, where the areas we were at is pushing us into the fish. So I couldn't spot lock, or if I did, I should have spot locked even further out. But it was hard to guess the distance of the boat. And if it swung around, would the tail end of the boat be too close to the beds and scare them off? Or would it be too far away to even see the bed and the fish to properly sight fish? So I kind of stayed on them a bit where I could barely see them. But occasionally I had to bump the trolling motor and bump us in reverse, which sent a at them. And they were I think they were very conscious of me. The water clarity wasn't very good, but they could see you because they're sitting in a foot or 2 of water. So they could see you before you could see them a lot of the time. And what I was doing is right as I'm seeing the fish, and I'm going real slow too. That's another tip, slow down. Because, you need to be able to properly search. And what will happen is sometimes you don't see the fish till it moves. So there's these dark spots that look like rocks or laydowns or something that all of a sudden it moves because it sees you now. And when that happens, you're not going to catch that fish right then. You need to stop, spot its bed where it was sitting, make a marker of it, back off, and then wait a minute or two and slowly either approach that bed and try to sight fish it. But that's what I was doing wrong, I think, is I kept getting too close and putting the fish on edge. I should have spent more time. I should have backed off a lot farther and just blind casted and just slowly fished, because that's how we caught most of our fish, the ones that we actually caught. I take that back. I caught 2 off of a bed sight fishing. My daughter caught one just blind fishing. My son caught one just blind fishing, but my son caught a short fish up shallow, so it didn't weigh in, unfortunately. And it couldn't have anyways. Live well broke. Check valve broke on the hose down there in that fitting. So now water just pours out of the live well no matter what you do. So it's just sucks. So I got to get that fixed, and then just get everything dialed in so I can still fish. I just can't fish tournaments until I get that issue fixed, or I got to get a plug basically. And I bought a few plugs, but they don't work. They're too big. Hey, good evening, Ronald Roquemore. So I think I have to get in like an official nitro plug from Bass Pro Shops or somewhere. See if they even make them, like a live well plug to plug the outgoing water port right there, and pray that works and take it out for test spin and see. But then I gotta hope a fish doesn't knock it loose right when they're flopping and moving around. So interesting. We'll see, because I believe the check valve is going to be somewhere underneath the live wells, just like the other valve was, and that probably means you're gonna have to pull the gas tank, a big old ordeal. So that sucks. We'll have to deal with that bridge when we get there, though. So I'm just going to take some time off of tournaments just for probably a month or two so I can generate some money and get ready to buy another boat and fix this thing up. And then the boat will finally be ready for tournaments. I'm also going to get a new fish finder for the front of the boat, and I can't afford like Live Scope or Live Target or any of that. Hey, how's it going, Kamze? Nice seeing you on tonight. So I'm going to be doing some fixing up on the boat. I have some to do before I can go back tournament fishing, and that sucks. I learned out the hard way because it's been holding water, and it acted up on me at Pine Flat on a tournament. It was draining too, but luckily we just the weigh-in was right by the ramp, so we just parked. Got a fish bag, as long as the pump was on, it was fine. We were able to weigh in, and then it started working again after that. And then like something was stuck in there, but I think when the something became lodged free, I think it broke the valve or something. So it hasn't been working since, and I didn't pay it no attention until I fished a tournament, because I haven't been boxing my fish much, or if I have, I've been boxing them for a picture or something and then releasing them before I pull out of the water, so I'm never seeing the live well low. So it was trippy. Anyways, we're going to talk about Lake New Melones. We're going to talk about Lake Don Pedro, and I can talk a little bit about McClure from some of my buddies who've been out there, but also the Delta. So I was just out at the Delta, went out to Russo's, went out with a guy named Harry. So I fished with him in the 1790 tournament, or, he was one of the other boaters. Really nice guy. He's got a blue Vexus. So we went cruising around the Delta. He got himself a nice striper, and then lost a decent sized bass on a drop shot. It was an extremely tough day. I caught, I think, like 4 or 5. So it was very slow, tough, but the fish were chunky, big. And I caught one that was, 5+. So it was nice. We got that on video, got it weighed, show you guys us releasing it. So it was almost 5, basically 5.5 almost. So it was a nice, fat, chunky bass. Got it on a spinnerbait. So if you're fishing the Delta and the wind picks up, I strongly recommend a spinnerbait. And depending on, because it can be real dangerous for you and your boat, depending on the location of where you're fishing and how you're doing it. But if you got plenty of battery power, you trust your trolling motor, your spot lock. It's really important at the California Delta to get parallel and get close to shore. So it can suck when there's 3 to 5 foot rollers or waves from massive winds and boats driving by certain areas, and there's all this crazy riprap and rock. So it can get really hard to get close. Nice. You've been out doing the Delta 2 and caught a PB 7.5. Congratulations, brother. The Delta's got some monsters. And my biggest recommendation to people would be the Delta can get dirty, tidal issues can happen. So unless you are in right conditions to go spotting beds, I would just recommend running a square bill crankbait and a spinner bait along the outside weed edges right now. Or if you get high tide, get into the inside, and there's usually almost any spot in the Delta, you got the shore like this, and then about 2 or 3 feet, maybe even 4 or 5, and sometimes only 1 or 2, you have the weed edge, right? And we call that a trough, right? And then there'll be this big clumping of weeds, and then there's the outside weed edge, right? So in the Delta, on the outside weed edge, some of the biggest fish, the female fish, any staging fish will be right there. They'll be sitting with their face out, buried in those weeds, looking out into the current to get a quick meal and come back in while they're just chilling. And so especially if it gets windy or rough weather. Now, if it gets windy, I would throw a spinnerbait over a crankbait. And if you're throwing a spinnerbait, I highly recommend a double Colorado blade for the Delta over a willow blade because you want more thump. And gold blade over silver blade. A little bit dirty water. The gold catches that sunlight and has a brighter flash, while the silver has just this shiny flash, but that gold has that flash that you can see from like a mile away. And use it along the outside weed edge and roll it real slow so that you're getting down there and you're just going by. And I would recommend put a small trailer on there, nothing too big because you don't want the fish to short strike it. And that's how I caught my monster. Now, if the weather is relatively decent, I recommend do the same technique, but do it with a square bill. If the weather's better, the water's clear, you'll get a staging fat pregnant mama who hasn't came up and laid her eggs. Maybe there's a bed, there's a couple males there, but she's just about ready. She hasn't done it yet. She'll be sitting in those weeds, right? So the 2 ways to get her outside weed edge, where a lot of the time they'll be facing, especially as the tide's going and it's lowering, they'll be sitting there positioned to take advantage of a quick meal. So they maintain their energy, health for the eggs, their body, all that good stuff. They've got to eat every once in a while. So even though they may go periods where they just not, there's got to be times when they do. And so moving tides, some of the obviously the best, but you can get them on low tide too. You just really want to work your lure slower and not as quick as, let's say, when you have the tide moving, because the tide's going to assist your lure anyways, unless you're fishing against it, in which case the tide actually can slow it down a little bit, but give your lure more action. So when the tide's going out and you're coming against it like this, and if you're slow rolling and the tide's going against you, it's going to make your spinnerbait just vibrate a lot more, but it'll lift it up, so you're going to have to go slower to get your lure down more. And that's how I've been cracking them. Now, in the inside trough line, that's where they'll either have beds or they'll be sitting there, and the males will be up in the shallow right there on the rocks where you can see, and the females will be right next to them, but in the weed edge like that. Same way, instead of being on the outside edge facing out, they'll be on the inside edge facing in, or laid up horizontal with the weeds, or in some way to just really chill and blend in. And they usually don't get that big by being stupid. That's why you usually see the birds that have fish that they're eating on the shoreline are usually 2 pounds and under, right? The males that are up shallow, especially this kind of year. Plus, it's harder for a fish to attack a 5-6 pounder. Hey, Racho Bunch, nice seeing you on. You're looking for numbers when you take people to have fun. Any recommendations? If you're not taking children or even if you are, if the people are familiar with and know how to use it, I actually would recommend square bill 2.5s on medium action spinning rods so that the people don't have problem with backlash. They can cast easier under trees, docks, and into key positions more with the spinning bait. A lot of people can. Even people who are very attuned to fishing usually will still have a more efficient and easier time casting management and all that, line management, and making repetitive casts over and over if they need to without issues, without backlash, break issues, tension issues. The drag works. You set it, and it, on a bait caster, it can be a little iffy. Like, am I too tight or too loose? It doesn't make any noise. It's silent. So you don't even know sometimes when your drag's going out unless you're really in, you can feel that when you're reeling, there's no turning of the spool. You can kind of feel it. But I would say for beginners and medium people out to have fun at the Delta, 3 specific lures. You're going to want to give them I would stay with the Colorado bladed spinnerbait, even almost all times of the year, and a double blade at that. And put a small little swim bait or even crawdad or whatever or even just a straight worm, whatever. You can do a lot of crazy stuff, a little curly tail worm. Put a little trailer on the spinnerbait, right? That's what I usually do. And I'm usually using a white and a chartreuse, or either like a dark, like a red and black, or black and blue, like a midnight special. So that's a single blade, big blade Colorado 1/2 ounce spinnerbait. And I'll put a little trailer on those as well. And I'll put crawdad trailers too, like you would on a chatterbait, right? But I'm using it on a spinnerbait. And what I'll do is I'll give them, it depends on their skill level. I don't like kids with treble hooks near me and unexperienced people with treble hooks. So I'd feel much better with a spinnerbait. It's one big hook. It's easier to get out. It's harder to hook you. And there's more manageability with it. You cover water. You can fish the main channel for small fish and numbers right now, but a lot of fish are moving into spawning grounds. So they're going into sloughs and they're going into offshoots and they're going into places like Frank's Track, Mildred. They're going to places that just don't have as many giant boats that come through and smash the shoreline. However, that being said, there are a lot of bass that'll spawn downtown Delta on that riprap in those flats right there. So the main can actually be a good spot for numbers. There's some big fish that can be had on the main as well. However, I'd prefer to go to somewhere like Ben Holt, but it's real time consuming going in between the slips and going around just to fish that short little spot where you got a dock, you got an area on the left in front of you and an area right. And you can fish out. There'll be fish in the middle too, and in the slips and all that. That whole place is about maybe 6 feet deep. So 8 feet deep on high tide and 5 or so feet in the middle on low tide, something like that. And the middle, they could be spawning right out in the middle. The whole area is this big protected cove, basically. And the bass like to spawn not where boats will be moving in and out constantly. So they'll spawn in the lanes where, yes, boats will move in and out, but they don't usually spawn under the slips underneath the boats for some reason. I mean, at least I don't see them down there. They might be. They'll spawn right underneath the motor sometimes, weird positions, but they usually will spawn, or at least maybe it's just because that's where we can access. I do catch them in between boats and stuff sometimes. So actually I'm wrong. It's just like a certain distance out. It seems they stop. So you got shoreline, and then you have these areas in between where the docks start and the walkways will go like this, right? And I'll get my boat right up in there and fish those areas. And there'll usually be a lot of fish in Ben Holt. And then in and out, if there's open slips without boats in them, I'll fish those as well. It's just try to pay attention and see if there's a like one of those bars or those boat lift assist things underneath, because you got to watch what lures you throw in those, and you get snagged a lot. Or if you get a big fish, they'll take you in those. So it depends. You got to, like a top water would be a good thing to throw over that, so that if something comes up, you can hook it and ski it across out of that slip. Because if you see 2 or 3 feet down, there's a boat lift assist or like bunch of cables. I've lost plenty of probably double digits down to like 6s and 7s to just smash me and then take me in, and I can't control them, and they get me into one of those. So those are like my nemesis. So I fish inside those little, they look like hammer basically. If you were to look at it on a map, you've got, let's say, a dock here and a dock here with slips where the boats can pull in. They're covered, right, with the walkways, and they're like this. And there's an area like this all the way in an area like this, and then the middle part. Well, I'll find them like about 10 to 15 feet before the end of the dock. So there's this zone that they seem to be in, but a lot of the time they're right up against shore, obviously, right? That's where they're spawning, but they'll spawn a bit off too, and there's these big areas. So Ben Holt's one of my favorites, monsters in there. Also like to fish Apothecary Cove, but they've been building this thing across it over by Lois Park. Lois Park's been closed, so I don't know what's going on over there. Um, there's some nice ones that'll be up in lads too, spawning around in lads, believe it or not. You need to launch from lads and fish around there. But Windmill Cove, I almost always get a few nice ones that are in the back by that drain pipe in Windmill Cove. And then there's a couple that'll be in the dock on that turn right there. Hey, keeping it real, long time no see. So I'm just putting people on some delta positions that I like to fish. So Windmill Cove, the ramp, the little ramp after. So if you pull in and there's that island, they'll spawn all around that island and in that flat in Windmill Cove where the restaurant's at. So you can catch them all in there. But as soon as you go around that, before you get to that drain pipe in the back, there's a ramp on the left. And I'll always smash them on that ramp and on each side of that ramp usually. It's just a tough place to take two people in the boat unless you're like directing someone, because there's just these juicy casts that the guy in the front will always get if he's paying attention. But the guys in the back can still get them in the side. It's just, there's certain positions where like the guy in the front is just going to have all the key spots. Yeah, get shallow back there, low tide. It sure does. But, you can watch it get in there high tide, or when the tide's moving, they sit by that drain and they'll move in and out right there and they'll attack things. And then on that rock wall, they'll beat things up. And there's usually, I think there's this like little cut on the left. There'll be some weeds and usually floating crap builds up right there. And along that to that dock that's on the edge right there, they'll be stacked up. And then we've caught like a 7-pounder sitting, because everything comes around, it's like a point, and then it goes to that drain. Well, there'll be usually there's like a 3 to there's 3+. Like the biggest fish in the area for us seem to sit off of the edge of that dock facing out into the current. Yeah, that rock wall in the back, exactly. That's a killer spot in the delta right there. So Windmill Cove, the rock wall in the back where the drain pipe's at, the point of that last dock that goes in right into where that rock wall's at, the drain's there. So if you're in the Windmill Cove and you're looking and you see the pipe, there's this last dock over here. The fish will sit there pointed out because the current brings everything around like this and then through that drain pipe. So there'll be a lot that stack up the drain pipe, but there'll be usually in front of that, there'll be a nice one, usually by that dock in the corner. We've got some monsters on video even right there. Like me and Jeremy, like probably 200 videos back, like a year and a half ago. So I've actually got on video as catching like a 6 right there, I think. But we've had a long history of catching big fish back there. It's just usually there's a few, so it's tricky if you're trying to get numbers. That's like a tournament winning spot. Downtown along the main, starting from the bridge down, both sides can be really good. Yeah, exactly. The flood wall, it ruined the wall by Lewis Park. Yep. And if you can still get into that cove, though, man, that would be wicked. I just don't know if you can get in there, because that cove's where we've caught many big fish in there. Got some monsters, but I've got a double digit out of Ben Holt. So Ben Holt's one of my favorite. Garlic Brothers, right there, fishing there during spawn. Frank's Track is really good. There's a lot of different. Yeah, if you can get into Apothecary, I'd get in there. There's a couple of spots where they spawn in there. It's protected now, and it's been kind of a protected area because it's a cove that comes off the delta and then it turns like this. So these areas in the back are really well protected when the wind whips up. and there's not boat traffic that goes in there a lot. So it's a great little spawning ground. And then in summer, when the fry get about 2-3 inches in the late summer, um, they get competitive for the females can eat them now and actually get some sustenance. They're big enough now. So when they're small, the males will attack them. When they start getting bigger, the females will go after them and any shad or whatever else. So after post spawn summer, when it's hot, the bass will also push a ton of bait into Apothecary Cove and then pin them in there and stay in there all summer eating them. And they'll do the same thing with bluegill, especially because the bluegill spawn in there as well. So Garlic Brothers is blown out. Don't fish there. Everyone knows about Garlic Brothers. That's the thing, but it doesn't matter. The fish are still always there. It's just whether you can spot them and catch them on those particular days, depending on tide level, depending on wind, depending on how dirty the water is. I've been at the Delta where the water was just crystal clear and I could see down 5 or 6 feet. I could see beds everywhere. I could see the fish. It was so awesome. Then I've been there at the Delta where it's like it's during spawn and it's chocolate milk. You can't see shit. You're just guessing and randomly pitching casts. And it's during those times when the bass are on their bed and they're all finicky. So you have to be slow. And oh man, yeah, it's hit or miss. So the whole Delta can be like that. So there are great days for sight fishing, bad days for it. But that spot is just, it's always been pretty good to me. And then the areas, the points right in front of it. Oh man, Garlic Brothers, sweet. And Myrtle, or what Myrtle? What was I saying? Why did the name just slip my mind? What the hell? Mildred Myrtle. Mildred. Two old people's name. They think of old ladies like Grandma Myrtle, Grandma Mildred. So over by Mildred, there's some nice spots that they're spawning at. And I also recommend whenever you see these sloughs, right? And they got the rock wall right there to stop erosion. Whenever you see the rock wall for a while and there's nothing, it's just rock wall, and then all of a sudden there's tules, boom, 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 and then the tules stop. Fish those tule groupings on the rock wall. Another thing you can do is when you see nice definitive weed edges that aren't really huge, that don't go from the shore to like 30 feet out, but when you see a nice thick 3 to 5 foot wide clumping of weeds that run down the shoreline, it doesn't matter how plain or good or shitty or bad or awesome the spot looks. When you see a perfect spot like that, where the weeds and also where you see the shore, and then you see a nice 3 to 5 foot gap between the shore and then the weeds, and then you see a 3 to 5 foot gap of weeds and then open water. Oh, those are juicy, because any fish traveling and moving along that spot hug right up to those weeds for cover, because they're not swimming out on the open unless there's like the big striper, all that. Everything's, right up against that weed edge. And from the bait fish to the big fish. And if they're traveling, they'll travel alongside it. If they're stationary, they'll pull up into those weeds and face outward, so that when your bait goes near those weed edges, they'll come out and smash it. And always, when you see those weed edges, don't take your boat and cast your lure at it and work those weed edges like this. Always take your boat, position it right next to the weed edge, and fish the weed edge like this. It is extremely important. And if the tide's high and you can get to that back trough area, or if not, put your boat right here, cast as far as you can, and fish that trough area where you have a gap between the shoreline and the beginning of that weed edge. If it's big enough, oh, those fish will just stack up right there. So anytime you see that, definitively stop and fish it if you want. There's always going to be fish there. And sometimes there'll be some random monsters that are just like, they're like little truck stops, right? Little rest stations where the bass post up and chill. And sometimes if the riprap's big enough, they'll spawn on it too. So you can also watch that. If the riprap's too small, then you won't see fish spawning on it. But if the pieces and chunks are pretty big and flat hard, yeah, they'll see big beds on those sometimes. So sometimes you come across some big ones. I got about a 6.5, 7 pounder on video 2 years ago doing that exact same thing when I first started the channel. Was super stoked. I was all by myself at the Delta fishing those random clumps, and it was chilling right between the clump and the shore, just facing out like that. Tossed my Cinco in there. I watched my Cinco start swimming off. Boom. As soon as I set the hook, I knew it was a monster. And it was cool. I was recording that one cast to catch. I used to do that a lot more, record cast to catch, but I run out of batteries and SD card a lot, and it gets frustrating when you do that through a bad portion of the day, and then when you start tearing them up, you run out of batteries. It sucks, but it's some pretty cool footage. So what I try to do is sparingly use the GoPro, and then when I get into the fish, I start recording so that I get cast to catch stuff. But yeah, I'm working on it. So once we get the boat a little tricked out more, we're going to put chargers and things in there so I can operate stuff. Hey, what's going on, Robert? So anyways, the Delta right now is I've also seen fry already, big schools of fry. So damn, they've been spawning. They've obviously, the first wave has probably been done like a month ago. I've seen some groups of nice fry and a lot of them too. Not a ton of fry, so like I said, it's just kicking off. But it was surprising to already see some decent fry that they weren't really microscopically small. They were pretty good size. So I was like, well, I'll be darned. There's been some spawning fish here probably for a month or more. So it's pretty cool to see. And so the Delta is just, it's hit or miss. The brutal wind can make it tough. We were fishing in brutal wind, like 20-mile-an-hour wind. And I got a monster, got a good one. But and I'm gonna, that video, I just finished it, so I'll be releasing it. Members, you guys want to see me stick a hog, that video will be coming out probably tonight for you guys, and then it'll hit the general public probably like Wednesday or Thursday. And then I've got me catching monster spotted bass with my son at New Melones. That video is coming out next as well. And then there's the Ed Lacey tournament where we got our butts whipped. We only had 3 fish. We fished hard. We're all excited. I was going to go weigh in, and then the video is going to end at that. And I'll tell you guys the story why at the end of the video. In a nutshell, my flapper valve broke, so I couldn't weigh in. Fish, the live well drained, so the fish would have died. So I just had to release them right there at the ramp. 10 pounds was cashing a check. And I had probably 7 1/4 pounds for 3 fish. So, I mean, we would have caught 2 more. We were that close. But I fished for a group of probably some 2 to 3 pounders. And there was 3 of them that were at least 4 to 5 pounds. And 1 fish that looked 8 to 10. And it was in the deeper water, like where you could barely see, but it wasn't a carp. It was sitting in one spot, looked like a bed, but I could barely see it. And then the spot, whenever I got close, I'd notice it move and swim away. If I went off and came back, it would be there again, but then it would move off again if I got too close to it. So I fished for it a little bit longer probably than I should have. Couldn't get it to bite, and then I sat and fished for these 4 and 5 pounders for like 3 hours. So it was pretty tough. Yeah, it was not easy. So for me, it was tough. I'm sure a lot of people caught numbers, because when we fished a certain way, we did all right. But when I came across this grouping of big fish, I just got mind screwed and spent way too much time trying to catch them, because it was make or break. If I would have caught those fish, we would have came in first place, won the tournament. No doubt it was over. Big fish was 3.5 pounds. I seen some that were easily 4 or 5, and for sure right up in 2 feet of water. There were, and I'll tell you guys, so we're going to start going on Pedro now. So where I found decent fish in Pedro is 2 locations pretty much. That's going to be, 3 locations, sorry. So if you're going there recently, in Woods Creek, in the very, very back on the right-hand side, before you go all the way in the back, there's this long tapering point on the right, and there's like a cut and like a little mini creek that goes up in there. Well, right there, and I can pull a map out or do something to show you guys, but there's a grouping of 4 and 5s, and there's a monster that's sitting out there too with them. And I think 2 of them, I had spotted one that looked like 6 to 8, one that looked like it was 8 to 10. or more. I could barely see it. And then probably 2 or 3, I think they were, that were 4 to 5. And then I seen probably 10, 15 fish, 2 to 3 easy, because we had almost a 3 pounder in the live well. I took a picture and posted on Facebook. You can see my live well's pretty big, and these fish are pretty nice largemouth bass. And they weren't huge or nothing, but they were 2+ pounders easy. So I had about 7 pounds. So if I would have had 5 fish, I would have easily cashed a check and placed in the top probably 7 or 8. And it was fun. I had a great time. It was a tough trip, but it just sucked that we couldn't weigh in because the flapper valve broke. Fish would have died, so we just let them go at the ramp. Because even with just 6.5 to 7.25, whatever it was, because I didn't weigh them, but they were nice. So let's just say minimum they were 2 pounds for the smaller two, and then the biggest one was maybe 2.5. I mean, 6.5 pounds for 3 fish. If we would have got 2 more 2 pounders even, that would have made 10.5 pounds, would have put us in the money. And if we could have just got one of those 4 or 5 pounders, man, that would have been it right there, let alone one of the bigger ones. And I seen them. They're there for sure. It's hard to explain because, see, at the very back of woods, it goes like this, and then it goes to go back to this last long cut. But before that, there's this kind of gray wall. There's a point that goes this way, and then there's a cut that goes in here just a little bit. It kind of comes around like a point, and then and it opens up right to where it starts to open up. Before you go back around, it gets really skinny, where it's starting to get skinny on the right hand side in that little cut. There's a house up there, a nice wooden house with an American flag, and there's a dirt like mud road that tire tracks from like couple of big 4x4 trucks have been up and down when the lake was probably a little bit lower and recent, or you can see them right, and the water level's right there. Well, there's a ton of fish bedding in those tire tracks, and then on top of that, on that point, it's a nice flat hard bottom point out about 6 to 8 feet where you can barely see are a couple of big giant beds. With those are where the 2 monsters are at. Now if you go around there, right on the edge, that's where the beast was, like the one that looked 8 to 10. The silhouette, it was just huge. I don't know, could have been bigger, could have been smaller. It was just a monster, and I fished for it for a long time. And right next to it, another 10 feet around that point, but before you got all the way around it, was like the one that looked like it was 6 to 8 or something. It was huge, right? But they were both real deep, but barely where you could see, and you're looking down and you can see like some white spots from what may be a bed. Then you see this dark shape and then swim off, and you're like, and you can even see part of the fins and stuff, like as the light catches it, or if it moves a little bit sideways. I even seen one go sideways, bellying, doing its thing down, and it was huge. And it was in that same area. And then and I don't know what size that was. And then when you go around, those tire tracks come up into it makes this real shallow, like a Y almost right there, where there was 2 like washes and a little mini point, and it's all grassy right there. Well, in between, and there's some laydowns on the left. All back there are some, like, those are like the 2 to 3s, and a couple of the 4 and 5s are each in the farthest back of those little Ys. There's a laydown on the left, and there's like a 4 or 5 sitting on a bed right there by the log at the very end. And then on the right, in the big flat, about 3 feet away from everything, because the right side's super shallow, there's a big old bed with like a 4 or 5 sitting right there. And that whole Y is filled with like 2 and 3s and some bigger fish. It's in the back of woods. I couldn't get none of them to bite. I think they all seen me. The water's real shallow. I mean, it's not real shallow. It's like 3 up in the area right up there, and then 5 right drop off right away, and then went like to 8 to 12 where your boat's at is probably 8 to 12. So it's like safe for you, but you need, and the watercolor was real, like not real dirty, but for Pedro, it was kind of dirty. And there was a lot of wind recently. The lake level's coming up, so the water's still kind of dirty. So visibility was harder for us, but because the fish are up shallow, They can spot you from really far while you take a while to see that fish. They can see you better. And by the time you get there, what was happening is it's not like so sometimes if you've ever done spawn fishing and you roll up and it's real clear and you may not have the best eyesight or you're kind of squinting, the water's sun's glinting off the water and you pull up, you see all these beds, but there's no fish on them. A lot of the times those fish were on those beds or right in front of them. They spotted you and they moved to deeper water. So by the time you could even see anything, they're gone. So that happens a lot, right? But when it's real shallow, what can happen is they can see you before you see them, and they may not move yet. They just get kind of agitated and swim around, or they can think they're like, oh, is that that's what my opinion is I watch their behavior kind of change as I'm approaching them, and I spot them, and I'm trying to slow down and fish for them, and they'll swim off and they'll do this. I'm like, damn it. And then I'll have to back off and I'll notice, okay, that was one right there, and I'll watch for it. And there seems like a competition, like who can see who the first, because once the fish sees you, it's on the lookout for you. So it's kind of like, hey, where's this asshole I just saw? And so he's looking around. And so it's like a competition of can you see that fish before you can see them? And then when they're in that mood, you need to cast damn near onto the shore and barely wiggle that worm into the water, because as soon as that worm hits the water, that bass skirts off. And then you start wiggling it towards the bed, then the bass slowly comes back, right? And your bed's only X big, right? So by the time you got its attention, now you're on the bed. And if you dead stick it too long, the bass kind of pays it no attention or just leaves it alone sometimes. Sometimes it'll eat it when you're dead sticking it. But then you start wiggling it and it either hits it or it doesn't. But if it can see you, it's not going to eat that bait. It's going to keep doing, it'll look at it, it'll inspect it, might even almost nose on it, and then it'll swim off. It'll see you and it'll swim off and it'll come back. And we'll repeat that process all damn day. It was so frustrating. And I should have took my own advice. What I should have done is pulled off a lot farther, spot locked. The wind was going in. I should have let the tail in, kick back towards, and put myself well enough back there. Let my kids go towards the front of the boat and cast all over like rainbows everywhere up towards shore on this side, that side, out in the deep, and just drag their worms and chill. And then I could have stood on the back of the boat, well out of eyesight from them, just cast it out them, made sure I was in casting distance, because I've seen so many. All I had to do is just do that, let them calm down from being all riled up from seeing me, and make long casts at them and just barely work my worm through there real slow. I know I probably could have caught the rest of our fish, upgraded, could have caught a couple of them, because there were some 2s and 1.5s in there, but there was a lot of nice fish, like 3s. There was some, they were paired up. You'd see a 1 3/4, maybe a 2-pounder with like a 3, 3.5. You'd see a 3-pounder with like a 5. It was like, what the hell? Or a 4 maybe, but or 2.5-pounder with like a 4. And you're just like, dang, they were just really nice back there. So yep. How's it going? No Limit Off-Road. Mike Dozier. Yeah, a fun tournament. How's it going, RC Creative? So we're talking about a couple of fish stories, breaking down some recent fishing trips, the mood that the fish are in, some mistakes that I made, and I think what I could have done different. So if you guys get out there, there's 2 ways. I think another thing that I might have been able to, you guys are just starting pre-spawn. Nice. There's another thing I think I could have done, and we'll talk about that here in a second, that I could have done to get these fish to bite. And I found that out at the Delta. I just kind of just learned it. I mean, I've always known it, but just had to re-experience it. Is don't forget that you can actually cause some of these fish to react. You can punk them into biting. When you throw a worm at them 100 times and they don't want nothing to do with your worm, but you pull out a spinnerbait or a crankbait and you start rolling it through their nest a few times, they'll get pissed and they'll snap at it. With those treble hooks, especially on a crankbait, you'll get them. And sometimes the mom might come out pissed off, or the mama, because the male hasn't hit it. It's been real spooky. But if the lure's big enough and menacing enough, and the mom gets fed up of looking at that, she'll come out. You'll agitate her and piss her off. But even not, just by luck fishing, just covering water and using a crankbait or a spinnerbait, you can get a big old mom or a buck or whatever, a group of them just sitting there spawning or waiting or chilling, staging to just react, because it's like fight or flight. That lure comes by their face, and it's almost like not a 50-50 chance, but that's almost what it is. It's like you're either going to trigger their little bass brain to say, oh shit, big food coming by real quick. Do I eat it, or what do I do? Like, it, like all those factors I'm sure go through the bass's mind. I'm not a psychic, but how big it is, what it looks like, how hungry is the fish, what time of day is it in a feeding period, and then even if it's not, can you, with the right action, with the right lure, trick its mind into saying, screw that, I'm eating this thing? Because that's ultimately what you're trying to do, a reaction. You're trying to get the bass that may just be sitting there minding its own business to react to your lure. And sometimes with that finesse lure, it just won't, they don't want nothing to do with it. They inspect it, they might look at it, they don't care, especially if they can see you. But if you're using a reaction lure, sometimes you can crack these fish. And when I was started trying to do GoPro, I hadn't started a channel yet. I bought a GoPro. I was wearing them. I got some awesome footage of like 8-pounders and 6-pounders, but someone stole the GoPro from me, like after a year of having it. And I had saved up all these memory cards, but didn't quite know how to video edit it yet. Hadn't played around with them, but I had a bunch of decent footage. I had a 6-point-something spotted bass at New Melones. I forgot what it was. I'm pretty sure we weighed it. And I have a picture of it. It was like 6 to 7 pounds. It was huge. It wasn't quite 7, but I forget. It was either like 6.5 or above, like close to 7. And got that on a double whopper plopper and got all that on video. And then like I said, someone stole my GoPro, and it had the 132 gig or whatever. It had the one that you can record mad hours, and I had all my best footage on it. And then because I had maybe not even had it a year, just so many months, and I only had so many trips on it. But I had 2 memory cards. I remember both of them were 132 gigs. And one memory card had the best of the best footage on it, while other memory card had decent footage on it. And so when it got stolen, I lost the good memory card, but I found the other one. And some of my earlier videos are actually videos of me from like 2011 or 12 to like 2015. So I just never started my YouTube channel then. And I got double digits back then. I got a lot of fun monster trips at the Delta, 8.5 on a drop shot at Lake McClure. I had a lot of fun adventures when I had my other boat. And I've never started my channel. I regret it. So anyways, yeah, it back in those days, I was using a crankbait and a spinnerbait at New Melones and smashing 20-pound bags when I was fishing the Future Pro Tour. And I went and told everybody, was all proud and excited. I was like wanting to start my YouTube channel, I was trying to give people help, and I was doing good. And then come tournament time, because we had made some mistakes and we pre-fished and caught some of our fish that we shouldn't have the day before, because there was a guy that wanted to join the tournament with me. He was going to help me pay for everything, and he wanted to pre-fish to get some confidence in. So I took him to a lot of the spots that I knew fish were at, and I was telling him there's like a 5 or a 4 right here. There's a couple here, and this fool went and caught half our fish. And then come day of the tournament, we go, and I was supposed to be throwing that spinnerbait and crankbait. And after like 20, 30 minutes of not getting them, I put it down and started finesse fishing, because I think the dude in the back caught one. And we just had a horrible day that day, and we didn't weigh in good. I think we were like back 3/4 of the pack or more. Didn't come in last, but you know what I mean? Hey, Sam, how's it going, Mad Bass? Got one on the lip stickers. Nice. So pre-spawn. So yeah, and some of you guys that are on the East Coast or other areas. So some of you guys in Florida, Texas are like, what are you talking about? We're post-spawn, or you guys may have some late spawners, but or maybe a full-blown in the middle of your spawn. But here in California, we're like pretty much full blown in the middle of it. There's some post spawn, believe it or not, already. There's some fry already, but not much. It depends what lake, what area you're at. But the Delta, I definitely seen fry. Didn't see too many fry like that at Don Pedro or New Melones. But I did see some. I did see one group of them at Pedro. And then New Melones, I didn't see any. But we'll talk about New Melones here in a bit. So pre-spawn, if your stuff's just barely turning on to pre-spawn, you should really be throwing that spinner bait that I sent you, those jigs. I'd throw a little trailer on those jigs. So the lip suckers. Yeah, okay. So you got one on the lip suckers. There you go. I was like, oh, what do you mean? So yeah, I would throw those jigs. I would throw that spinner bait. The Ned rig will work during spawn when they get a little tougher to catch. I'd throw that Ned rig right now during pre-spawn. You're going to have a lot of cruisers. They're starting to pull in from the winter bite, so you may still be able to fish deeper with finesse stuff like the Ned rig, the jig, drop shot, a Nico rig, a wacky rig Cinco. You could throw shallower. I wouldn't throw that deep, but Nico rig it and throw it deeper, just put a heavier nail weight in it. And you can fish out probably, depending on what state you're in, I don't know, maybe 25, 30 feet deep and shallower. Sometimes here in pre-spawn, I'll still get them in 40 to 60. So it just depends, especially lakes with big spotted bass like New Melones. I got some monsters in early March, in 50, 60 feet. So it was crazy. But I wouldn't be fishing that right now. So I would say if your lake's pre-spawn, probably focus on, the 5 to 25 foot range. Focus on things like a spinner bait, a crank bait, a swim bait, underspin, a jig, or if you have to finesse and bottom bounce, I would recommend something like a shaky head, a tube, or like a Nico rig with a bigger weight so that you can move it fast as slow as you want, and you can fish it shallow or deep, and you don't have to wait as long. So a nice like right in the middle weight gives you a lot of flexibility to fish in 1 or 2 feet of water all the way down to about 25 or so. So if your lake's, depending on your body of water, I wouldn't focus on anything super deep right now. And I would have 2 tactics in mind, basically, either reaction, and I would be going primarily with a crankbait, a spinner bait, or like an underspin. And I would not be really doing too much top water. Maybe early morning, do some top water. I left your white worm in your boat. Yeah, long time, huh? Sorry about that. Yeah, you can have it or throw it away. My bad. I took the rattle, I think, out of it, the rattle and the weight. So I think I transferred that from white over to a little bit dark brown, because when I'm doing sight fishing, I like to use that white worm so for high visibility. But like what we were doing at the Delta and the way that watercolor was, I wanted a little bit darker color worm. So I switched over to like I think I caught that nicer one on a peanut butter and jelly worm, actually. And then I used that marker, the scented marker on the head. So how is Pardee fishing? I haven't been to Pardee, brother, but I would assume that all of these lakes are going to be fishing good. But lakes like Pardee that have smallmouth in them, you can sometimes fish 25 feet deep, 20 feet deep for those guys, especially if the lake level's rising. They don't always come up super duper shallow to spawn, but they'll come up right in 3-5 feet of water as well. So find your spawning flats and just go have fun. I'd throw a jig right now. The lakes that are at higher elevations and more north, I tend to feel that they turn on just a little bit slower than the other lakes. So if these lakes, the fish are like real shallow, finicky on beds, and they're kind of like in that beginning stages of spawn, almost lockjaw, tough to catch, kind of clear water sometimes. And then they'll go, depending on the weather and wind and all these different factors and the lake levels rising or not, they'll go from where you have days where you're just smashing them to days where it's hard to catch a good limit. It's even hard to put 5 in the live well. And that's frustrating, but that's fishing. And right now, if I like I said, if based on the behavior, see, fishing was pretty dang good for a couple weeks before they went full blown spawn mode, and they're doing this whole dance where they're sometimes they're easy to catch, sometimes they're hard as hell to catch, and before they were more reliably easy to catch. So if your area is colder, if you're more east, if you're more north, if you're more in a higher elevation, then those lakes I would put at a little bit of a later time frame. So right about now, probably still be good to fish shallow all the way down to like 25, 30, and use things like a jig still. You don't probably have to throw a drop shot or dangle a worm on a bed, or near one. And you can probably get some fish on some reactionary stuff. Like I was saying, crankbaits up shallower, medium and deep divers out deeper, depending on what you see on your graph, right? And some of the lower lakes, we got a lot of carp and stuff like that. So you got to be aware when you see just a ton of the same size fish, and there are a lot of them, and they're suspended. A lot of time those are carp. So especially if you see jumping and activity that don't look right, and there's almost too much of it. Any of those ringed yellow lips, you see one carp, assume there's more. Especially where there's a lot of grass, they like to go in those areas. They'll go where bass spawn as well. So it can be really annoying, but they're usually in a muddier bottom, dirtier area. Well, bass will be in a little bit of a harder bottom, but those darn carp will be mixed right in with them a lot of the time. So pre-spawn, when the bass are in, let's say, 10, 15 feet, 20 feet of water, and they're moving around, they're pulling up from their winter areas, and they're starting to eat, and sometimes they're lifted up off the bottom, and they're moving and they're feeding, or they're, even if they're enough, they're looking to start beds, so they're up shallower and they're cruising. Those can be when they're the finickiest and scary. When if you see them and you cast at them or cast ahead of them, they dart and they move, and they like get spooked. That's where a weightless Cinco can come in really handy right then. So it just depends. I would not to be a Pardee champion for sure. I don't know too much about. I haven't been to that lake a lot. I don't even know if I've been there. I think maybe once. So I like to go there. That's on my list for this year. I want to do some smallmouth fishing. So I'm going to do some more fishing at Tulik. I'm going to do some more fishing at Pardee. We'll do some fishing. I want to do some more. We'll at least go there. I want to do some at Scotts Valley Reservoir. I want to do some like Trinity or Bullard's Bar, but you can only do so much so often. And gas prices, there's all these wants, but I have to pick and choose. There's only have so many opportunities to fish between work, family, all this stuff. So, and I really, it helps. Like when dudes like, see, Harry took me fishing. That was awesome. I didn't, have gas money or anything to put in my truck or boat. So it was like a godsend. I get out and have fun and go fishing, and I'm not breaking my wallet doing so. So it really helps when friends reach out and they're like, "Hey, you want to go?" I'm like, "Sure, dude." I mean, I try to pitch in, but a lot of the time, like if I'm hurting, I'm honest. If I can help, I will, or I'll try to pay for lunch or dinner or something. But it's cool. Get out there, smack them, have a good time. I don't worry. It's fun. So I fish with a lot of the viewers. If you guys didn't know, if you're local, I'm down to fish with you. Hit me up. So a lot of guys reach out to Facebook or Instagram. I enjoy. I get out there and I just fish and have fun. I'll fish in the back. I fish on the front, the side, wherever. I mean, just happy to get out and put my lure in the water. So, um, but yeah, this year's been blessed. It's been tough, but it's been blessed. I've got some decent fish. So we got some big ones out of New Melones, spotted bass. Got a big one out the Delta the other day, but I want to bust. This year I need to bust. 6, 7 pounds already. I don't want to be stuck at 5 and under right now. I've got a lot of decent fish, but nothing huge this year yet. So I'm looking to put another double digit. Every year so far that I've had a YouTube channel, I've got at least one double digit. So I need to get one this year. And these are probably the best chances at doing it. So I'll be doing some fun fishing where I'm looking for big bedded fish in the next month probably. But with these rising lakes, with the brutal wind, it's just been a crazy, crazy spawn this year. But it happens a lot. Sometimes some years are all perfect and calm weather more for you, and there's a lot more opportunities. But also, if you're retired, you can pick and choose. But and I kind of can too. I own my own business, but sometimes I'll be pre set up for a couple of days, and there'll come some perfect weather. Everybody's catching monster bass, and then when I want to go, it gets all shitty. Like, but I'm gonna go anyways. I don't care if good or shitty weather, or perfect or medium, whatever. I just go. So sometimes I miss some of those real premier opportunities, but I try to capitalize on them. Want to go to Clear Lake soon, but yeah. So we're breaking down the Delta. I would be fishing, So a recap: um, Don Pedro, I would be fishing in Woods Creek in the back of it, or on those island tops. I would also be fishing in Blue Oaks along the shoreline in the back there. There's a couple spots in Mexican Gulch, and then there's a spot over by the dam. Rogers Creek and 49er Bay would be my also check-in locations, and in the back at Big Creek as well. There's a lot of wood back there, so be prepared to deal with that. Hence, like a brush jig or something, with the heavy weed guard, or just a decent weed guard, prevents you from getting snagged up all the time. Don't throw open hook lures. So if you're going to throw a Nico or something, or a Ned, make sure you throw the weedless version. Or you have the weed guard on your hook. Like if you're using a Nico rig, you use a weedless one so you can pop it around logs and sticks easier. And it's a lot less harder. It's a lot, easier to get it through trees and brush and stuff. But I would be doing that. There's fish on beds, so you can be up. I would be still up shallow, cruising, looking for them. And then, there's one of two things. Either if you're slow enough, spook them, good, smack them. If not, and you spook them, they're on beds. They may not be locked on beds. So if you get close and it sees you and it swims off, that's fine. But that fish will to that bed. So if it was on a bed and not just sitting in just the shallows, looking like it's doing nothing, I've seen a couple of those too. Like they're not matched up yet. They're probably females or something. They look pretty decent, but they weren't on a bed, or maybe they're a male getting ready to start making a bed because the lake level's rising, right? So that would make sense in hindsight, just thinking about it. And I've seen some that were up shallow and they weren't on beds; they were just chilling, but they still protected that area like they were about to make it their bed. So if they seen you, they'd swim off, then they'd come back. So if that ends up being the case at wherever you're fishing, back off and just blind fish. And I mean it, just fish slow. Just find spawning flats or find those fish, back off and fish slow. But if you find big ones, so that's the thing. This is the time of year you should be cruising. If you got fair weather, go out on fair weather, go out low light. And as soon as you got enough light to see into the water good, make sure you have good hat, good glasses on. I'd recommend what I need to go do is buy myself like a pair of cocoons or something that basically almost are like goggles, so that even a pair of glasses, they sit away from your face. So, they're on your nose here, but the glasses are away. So light can bounce under from your cheek and in there and interfere with your vision, like being really perfect. So you want to increase your vision and your chances of spotting these fish. You want to prevent any light from getting in. So you want glasses that literally cup the eyes like this. And Cocoons makes a pair that literally does that, so that they like mold to your face like this and nothing gets in. And they're really good glasses. And then a hat, all that, and go cruise, find them. And then if you find them and they're locked on a bed and they won't move, great. Like you kind of spot them and they spot you and they get a little agitated, but they stay there and they kind of circle the bed, great. Then back off just a little bit and sight fish them. If you see them and they slowly swim off like they're going like this, just back off and wait a second. They'll do a U-turn and come right back. You just have to give them a few minutes, a minute or two. Some will come back right away, right in front of you. Some they'll take, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. They won't take too long. Eventually, they will come right back. They have to. They're forced to. That's their bed. They're going to go right back to it. Even if you're there, sometimes they'll just do it if you're just motionless and still, they'll just do it right in front of you. But then when you cast at them, they're like, nah. So that's why I would, make sure you're far enough away. So it just depends on their attitude, but I don't recommend being too far from shore. But if you're in a tournament and you're struggling sight fishing, back off and blind fish. That's what I should have done. Take my own advice, right? But in the moment of seeing all those really nice fish, it was hard for me to get off of them. And it wouldn't have mattered anyways. I could have had a 15-pound bag no matter what. I couldn't have weighed in. Stupid live well broke again. So the pump, it's still working fine, but the one-way check valve's bad, so the water drained out. So, but all right, so that's Pedro, 49er Bay. So in recap, 49er Bay, um, uh, Blue Oaks, Woods, Rogers, and Big would be my stop-ins. I know there's some fish in the back of Hatch Creek too right now. Those would be all the places I'd be checking. Everything else, there's some spots on the lake that are cool, that are key. There are little cuts and areas where they'll spawn. But Mid Lake has a couple areas like that. Moccasin has a couple of good areas. They can be at Moccasin too. That's another great spot to go. Up ahead by the pillars on the right-hand side on those nice spawning flats where the current brings everything by. You'll have some nice fish that bed out there. So, a lot of good spots right now on Pedro. The lake can be real tough, though. Right now, we, at the tournament, we had a bad time as far as just like, not a bad time. We had a great time, but it was just lightweight waves and wasn't a lot of big fish produced. It was like windy. It was a tougher day, and the fish were finicky. If you've seen them, it was not an easy day. But that fishing never is easy, or sometimes it is, but it's not guaranteed. That was what I meant. Fishing's not guaranteed to be super cakewalk, right? They call it catching and not fishing. Isn't that the joke? So I'm fishing the 1790 this week at Pardee. Never fished there. So good luck at the 1790 there. I would fish with like jigs, Eco rig, Ned rig, and look for spawning flats. They usually say the north, west arm, river arm, creek arm, or anything with spawning flats will be the first areas to turn on. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's always a old wise tale I've heard is look at a map and look at the north end of the lake and then towards on the west side and find the spawning flats in those areas, and you usually do good. Don't be fishing real steep stuff. Look for just hard bottom, wind protected coves, little creek arms, cuts and channel swing areas off of the main that offer some protection, but that have flat enough, hard enough bottom. Don't waste your time fishing stuff that don't look right or good. If it isn't going to have the right bottom and the right shoreline, the fish are not going to spawn on it much. You might have a few random ones, and sometimes really big ones will spawn in some weird places. But just for numbers and chance sake and chance of spotting a big one, that's what I would be doing is I'd look at it as a map and look at the northernmost west arm. They offer some wind protection along with spawning flats that aren't too deep, nothing with the drop off, but you want them to be near deep water though. So there's got to be where fish could have been staying there in the winter and moved up real easy, because the longer the trek, the less likely. The fish can just go from their winter staging, pre-spawn right up to shallow, move around, find their stuff, eat, everything's there that they need, and then spawn. Why would they want to move a mile or two in? I mean, they'll do some crazy stuff, but just for numbers sake and convenience, I usually find the spawning flats near some nice main lake points and deep waters will usually do some nice big fish will be there. If the whole area is a big spawning bay, then you have to find like the spot on the spot, because they could be spawning everywhere. So there'll be something that causes that fish to spawn there. So if there's a big old bay with a lot of spawning grounds, then it's going to be certain shorelines that get certain sun more than others. There'll be certain shorelines that have the best bottom, and they also have, let's say, some form of cover for them to spawn next to, some rocks, some not big boulders, but some nice chunk rock down there, some lay downs that they can spawn next to. So, that's where a lot of the largemouth are going to spawn, next to lay downs, next to wood, next to a form of structure to feel safe, in a wind protected cove or area where there's not a ton of current, wind current, waves. Wake boats can't disturb it too much. That's where you're going to find a lot of the bigger, better fish, or just some largemouth in general. You'll catch spotted bass like that too, but spotted bass can spawn a little bit deeper, and sometimes they'll spawn on flats too, but they'll spawn usually on a little bit more vertical sometimes than you'll find largemouth. But they like similar stuff. So, and you'll find them mixed in together too, like at places at McClure. Pull out a couple spots, pull out a largie, no rhyme or reason. They're just mixed in. Just some lakes are different. Like seems like Pedro has more largies than spots, and McClure is vice versa, has a lot more spots than largies. And then you got some of these lakes don't have any spots, thank God, like Eastman, stuff like that. So, anyways, that's Pedro. We did the Delta would be places like Windmill Cove, you know, Frank's Track, Mildred, Garlic Brothers, Ben Holt, Apothecary Cove, some of the sloughs, any areas that look like they widen up and provide a wind protected, nice little area for them to spawn where there's some hard bottom, not too many weeds. They won't spawn in weeds. They'll spawn amongst weeds if there's openings, but if there's just nothing but weeds, there's not going to be anything right there. There might be something behind the weeds or in front of them. But if you see them like polka dots, like a bunch of weeds, but there's open spots here and there, yeah, they'll spawn right in those holes. So just look at your shoreline at the Delta. Right now, there'll still be a lot of pre-spawn fish too, so you can catch them. Just stay as close to shore and as close to structure as possible. And the biggest tip I can give you for the Delta is do not fish at structure and out, at structure and out. Get your boat as comfortably close as you can and fish parallel. So the guy in the front of the boat is fishing like this, and the guy at the back of the boat is fishing like this, right along that shoreline, right along tule edges, weed edges, lay downs, anything, but right along it parallelly, not bringing your lure out. You're going to have much more chances of getting more numbers and more bigger fish. So that would be my advice for the Delta. Now we will talk about new Melones. And if you guys have any questions, any comments, feel free to fire away. Smash that subscribe if you're new here. Please leave a like if you're just enjoying tonight's show. Thank you guys very much for joining and being part of it. I really appreciate it. Just want to make sure I stop, take a moment to say thank you guys. Don't forget, we're going to be having an April members only giveaway as well. And we'll probably be waiting on the subscriber giveaway because we're almost at our next goal mark. So when we hit that, we're going to do a big one. I'll probably give away either like a combo, like a rod and reel or something. Instead of doing a lure pack or a gift card, we're going to do something unique. So we're doing a little bit of growth now. So that's pretty cool. So if you guys get a chance, share these videos too. So share them to your fishing pages, because when I share them and I'm the commenter or the YouTuber, it's like, oh yeah, this guy's just promoting his own shit. Who cares? But if someone else is sharing it, saying, hey, check this out, come join the show, or there's fun stuff or giveaways, or he cracks jokes that make us laugh sometimes, or a just entertaining value or educational. It would be awesome. You share the video, it helps the channel grow. But enough tooting our own horns here, or trying to, shout out. Just wanted to take a moment real quick to thank everybody, and then just let you guys know, appreciate your support, and how best to help is to leave a like, leave a comment in the comment section. That brings more people here while we're live. And then also, if you get a chance when we're done live, if you see this pop up, but hey, you're like, I already watched it, cool. if you can make sure you leave a comment on that, because they're different than comments here. So live comments are one thing, but then once the show is ended and it gets posted to YouTube, then anyone can watch it at a later time. Those comments are separate. So just so you guys know, that way, hey, if you guys want to help the channel, that's one of the best ways you can do it. Becoming a member, all you members, I thank you guys very much. So we're going to be having our April members giveaway soon. For subscribers, you guys stay tuned. That'll be coming around the corner. We're going to do a real big one, a nice one to say thank you guys. I also like to say we're a little bit into the video, but if anyone's interested, I am trying to do another toy drive to generate toys for needy children this year. Might try to do something with the kids in Ukraine or something, find a charity that's specifically dealing with them, as well as take care of some local families. Last year, we did about 65 children. We took care of Christmas for them. The year before, with your guys' help, because we had a Kelsey membership, we took care of over 200 children. It was so awesome. So hopefully this year we can grow it a little bit. Goals to take care of 100 children, like 15, 20 families, make a good impact. Also maybe send some stuff to some refugees or to some Ukraine places if they do that. I'm not sure what their belief system is, if they celebrate Christmas, but we might do something anyways from our end, so it's like a Christmas gift. But to them, it's just, hey, here's some help. So we'll be doing something cool this year locally. And if we get enough traction, like I said, we'll probably do something for like that. We'll find a nice charity that can help out what's going on over there, because that sucks. So just letting everybody know, if you guys want to donate money or toys, I'd be glad to take people on fishing trips. I take people anyways, but it's just a way you can help out. If you want to be part of the cause, if you want to donate in any way, reach out, let me know. So we're already starting. We got a couple of bikes. We got 4 bikes right now. I've got a couple bags of toys from Ross. And then I think we're going to do another little trip. We've been supplying all the toys so far. We just have a little supply starting, but we want to stockpile like last year and the year before and try to take care of as many kids. So let people know the Common Sense Fishing Toy Drive, Christmas Toy Drive is on. So if anyone's interested, I know that the interest around Christmas is always heavy around Christmas, but it isn't fun. Nobody ever wants to go fishing in November, December. It just sucks sometimes. October, sure, you'll get some traction. September, maybe even early November. But as soon as it gets too cold or rainy or wet, it's just not fun. And it cuts it too close to Christmas. So it's always best to do this when the fishing is the best. And we also are going to be doing night trips coming up here in June, July, August, where we'll be going out and hunting the biggins with night fishing with lights and stuff, where we'll try to get good video of everything, especially once we start catching them. We'll try to focus the lights on us, not on the fish and scaring them, but we want to illuminate the water a little bit and the boat, and make sure we get good footage for you guys. Some nights I think that can really hurt fishing, and then some nights I think it might either help or it's kind of neutral, because I've ran lights before while night fishing, and enough to get decent footage as well, and smashed them. And I've had nights where I ran lights and just kind of struggled, but it's hit or miss. So the double digit came on a dark night with no lights really, the one last year at Don Pedro. So this year, I'm hoping to smash one. We need to get another double digit. So now new Melones. We're going to talk about new Melones. There should be some bass in Angels Creek. A lot of bass in Angels Creek. There's going to be a lot of bass in the South Lake and near the dam spawning on a lot of those flats out there. And on the eastern shore down below Tuttletown, you'll have some that'll be up in there. And you'll also have, like I said, a lot in Angels Creek Arm. There should be. In Black and Coyote, you might have a few. A little bit steep shore, I think, in Coyote.
But up by the main, past the first bridge, you're going to have probably some good spawning ground on the left. And then um, heading into this towards the second bridge, right on that turn, there's going to be some good spawning ground back there. And also, if you're coming out of Glory Hole, when you launch, there's that saddleback that's barely out of under the water that you can drive across as a shortcut. When the lake gets lower, you have to drive around that big long island. When the lake gets higher, you can shoot right across it. Right on the other side of that, some decent spawning ground right there that they're catching them. All my monster spotted bass came off of that big long main tapering point that I always fish in the winter. I always fish it every time I go there almost, actually, because it's got a one side drops off. There's a deep area. There's a winter spot. There's trees out there. There's a big long tapering point. There's shallow. There's some rock. There's some laydowns on the other side. There's a little wind protected cove right on the other side of it. So it's just a killer little spot. And it's been in all my other videos, but you would get there straight from Glory Hole if you were going to shoot across, not across, but you're going to shoot to head upriver. You make that kind of like a left, you come around, and then you shoot like you're going to go upriver. Well, to your left, um, there's going to be a point, but right past that one, there's going to be a really long tapering point that you have to go around kind of, but now you can kind of cut close to go around. If the water level's low, you have to go around that one and then go around the big long island to get upriver, right? And then if the water level's high, you can cut across that shortcut. Well, like over here on this shore, on the western shore, there's a big long tapering point, and that thing was loaded up with monster 3 and 4 pound spotted bass. So that video I'm working on editing for you guys tomorrow. And so it'll go to members. So members, you guys will get all these access to these videos right away. And then it'll go to everybody else here in a couple days. Those fish should still be in that area. It's a great spawning ground, so I'd go be checking in over there. But, I try to give you guys the best up-to-date information. So it could be a little different now, but those are the places I would check in. You want to find your spawning flats. And again, things like Nico rigs, Ned rigs, drop shots, shaky head worms, stuff like that work if it's finesse fishing and they're on their beds. You can sight fish, you can blind fish. Either way, fish slow. And if you're noticing the bite is often and kind of hard, then that means you can fish a little faster. Throw things like jigs, maybe even throw a crankbait or a spinnerbait. Because if the fish are a little more aggressive on the bite, then that means they're going to be a little more open to reactive bites, especially if they're that aggressive to a little worm bouncing around. Then when a spinnerbait or crankbait's come flying by its face, it's going to smash that. So pay attention to your bite. If you're getting bit decently, in a short period of time doing something, and keep doing it if you want. But if both of you guys are doing it, someone try throwing a crankbait or a spinnerbait or something reactive through those same fish and see if you can't trigger a bigger fish, or just another one. Or what can happen too is if you're catching them and you catch 2 or 3 on one worm and then all of a sudden the bite shuts down, but there's more fish there, switch what you're throwing. Throw a different worm, throw a different lure, try throwing reaction now. And you might be able to get the other fish to eat a different way. So, but that's what I would be doing. Now, Tulik, I have a buddy who's caught a 7 pounder and like a 5 or a 6 pounder there. They caught like 3 monster bass there, and they're spawning up underneath the docks right now. And hey, JP Fraga, nice to see you on tonight. And they're spawning in that main body where all the houses are at, and then across the way in those little coves where there's coves that have a couple houses here and there, and then a dock here and there, but it's not too low. There's some nice bass in those coves in those areas. There's a homeowners association like place that has a bunch of a swimming lagoon area or like a swimming pool, I think, up at the top, or like barbecue pits and all that. And it's round. Those 2 coves, there'll be a lot of big fish in there sometimes. There's just all of those coves can hold big fish. I'd get in there, sight fish, and just keep your eye on the poles. where the docks are supported, there'll be spawners that lay up right up against those poles, is where they like to spawn. Some of the biggest fish, they spawn under the corner of those docks because a lot of those docks have poles that run down all the way to the bottom. Some of them, not all of them, but some of those structures, right? So when the water level raises or lowers, they're not floating ones; they're secured structures, right? The bass will spawn right at the legs of those in the back and in the front. They'll spawn in a lot of different areas there, but I would stick to all the coves, all the little areas that have docks. Also on the other side of the lake, that's more of the wild area, but where you have some sporadic homes over there and coves. I'd be all in those coves, and then there's that ramp halfway down by the little restaurant right there. There's a gate that opens, and then there's a big old like cement ramp that goes into the lake right there, and it's kind of like a main lake point. Big old monsters will spawn on that too. So that whole little area right there, I'd be targeting if you're going to Tulik. Tulik can be really hard as well, though. It can be feast or famine, but there's some monsters there. So you can go there and catch 3 or 4 giants, catch 5 fish, and do all right, or just go and catch nothing or just a couple dinks. That lake is an epic lake, though. If you want a chance at some big fish, definitely take a look at Lake Eastman, or sorry, Lake Tulik, and take a look at Salt Springs Valley Reservoir if you want to catch some decent fish, largemouth only, not be bothered with a bunch of little tiny spotted bass. So I would fish Lake Success. Now, I don't know about Lake Eastman, algae bloom, water levels, or any of that, but Lake Eastman does have some monsters. But I assume it's been blown out from that drought and being super low. However, I think that a lot of people like me and many others have left it alone. Well, maybe some of the locals are still tearing it up over there. And if the water level's rising, there's a couple creek arms on the eastern shore, right near the dam, where my buddy had like a 35 to 37 pound bag for best five. I watched him pull like a 12, like a 9, and a bunch of 7s and 8s out. It flabbergasted me, and we couldn't catch nothing. And he was super drunk out his gourd, and he was dead sticking, and that's why he was catching so many fish. And even though we were fishing slow, we were just fishing too fast. And he was catching fish, holding his stuff like bait. He was just drunk out his mind, rocking back and forth. Then he'd feel the tick and then set the hook and catch a monster. And it was so crazy. And he's using like 8 pound, 10 pound test or something like that, or six, or he's using nothing bigger than 10. And he's just fighting. These fish are just jumping and going nuts and flopping all around. And he's just all drunk with a cigarette hanging out his mouth. Just his little reel, a spinning reel. He got them all on a spinning reel, spinning setup, and the spinning drags just screaming. And I'm like, oh my God, it's the craziest shit ever. So Lake Eastman might be a good place to check in now. Um, so you never know, right? But thank you guys for watching. I appreciate everybody. It's 8:30. This is where I'll still talk about some stuff. I have some tips and tricks we can share. But also, this is the time where I leave the floor open to you guys and gals. If there's anything you guys want to talk about, any lakes you want to discuss, any ideas you have, or anything you want to share, I appreciate everybody watching tonight, hanging out, and checking the show out. So thanks for the likes, for the comments, everybody, and the engagement. Thanks for the members, the subscribers, and if you're just here hanging out, appreciate the viewers too. So if you're one of those people who have not subscribed yet, please consider smashing that red button, and appreciate it very much. But yeah, it's been a crazy one for me. So up and down ride, lot of cool things coming ahead, I believe. But some of my hopes kind of dashed a little bit because of reality, bills, money issues, the boat stuff that I'm just working. Life happens, right? It's not bad. I'm doing good, but it's just, I'm not able to just go fishing Clear Lake and go fishing everywhere. Well, I'm not just rolling around in money. Business is slow. I mean, even if it was really good, I would be forced to actually be working more and would have less time to fish, right? So, what's the go-to colors at lakes during spawn? Okay, so that's a great question. what I like to do is consider two factors really, is what's the water clarity and what am I trying to do? So let's say you're sight fishing, right? So water clarity and depth is going to play a large role. So if the water level of the lake, like Lick or Clear Lake, is a little more stable and it don't fluctuate by more than a foot or two, the bass will spawn. They'll stay on their beds. They're more easy to predict, easier to sight fish if the water clarity is not too bad. So if the water clarity is really good and the fish are spooky, so there's also behavior I put into effect. So if the fish are kind of spooky, they seem kind of hard to catch, I like to use white or silver or something that's semi-realistic as far as it's like fish color, like a white or silver and white. Um, but I want it to be high visibility so that I can back up, I can give the fish some room to breathe and relax. I can cast at the bed. I can still see the shadow of the bed, maybe the shadow of the fish, but the fish can't see me anymore. Or I can barely even I can't see the fish, but I can see the bed a little bit. And I think maybe you can see the silhouette, but you're not sure. You can't really see the fish, but you think you can. That type of thing. Well, you cast past it, and you can watch your little white worm go from one inch or 1 foot of water down to where that bed's at, and you can watch your white worm either do two things: it'll disappear, it's just gone, and your slack hasn't moved or nothing because the fish just ate it. Reel in and lift up slowly to test it and set if there's any kind of resistance. And you should see your white worm just floating if you lift. If you don't, bow. That's a fish. Or basically just trust it. If you see the lure go dark, one of two things have happened. The fish has either eaten it or the fish has swam in front of it, which you don't want to snag them. So, but you have that's one thing you can do is as soon as it goes dark, assume that the fish has the lure in the mouth. Sometimes what will happen too is you'll see part of the lure go dark because the fish has ate it, but some of the worm sticking out his mouth, and you can see that clear as day. Then the other trick is sometimes the fish will pick it up and move it off the bed, and you'll see your little worm, and you're holding your rod, you're not moving. All of a sudden, you'll see your worm just start moving by itself. Then you can set the hook, and you won't even see the fish because the fish will blend in so much with either the bed, the background, but that damn bright white. And there's three colors I would recommend: white or silver, or believe it or not, hot pink or orange. Something with high visibility, you can actually really piss these fish off and make them pick it up. And you can see that thing a mile away if it's hot pink or like bright orange or white. Honestly, it's some weird ass colors I like to use during spawn. Now, if the water is a little stained and it's dirty, or there's wind and there's dirt and muddish, or the water's all kicked up, or the water level using a lot, so it's kind of dirty and cloudy, you can't really see the beds, then I like to blind fish and use a more traditional color, because now I'm not trying to sight fish and use the worm as a marker for if I'm getting bit or not. So I'm going to fish a little slower. I'm going to use more realistic colors. And if the water's real dirty, I'm using darker colors like June bug, black and blue, purple and blue, dark purples and browns, peanut butter and jelly if the water's semi-dark but not too dark. And then as it lightens up, then I'm going to like a darker green or brown. And then as it lightens up a little more, a light green or brown, and like a watermelon, color with some flakes in it, salt and pepper, black flakes, or red or purple flakes, whatever floats your boat, right? And they make them in that light brown, almost see-through brown with the flakes as well, and so on and so forth until the water becomes clear enough to where obviously now you can see. Now you can then they go to that white, pink, or orange high visibility worm. So hope that makes sense. And then the two things I'm doing is I'm either sight fishing or I'm obviously blind fishing, right? And I'm usually sight fishing if the water's clear enough, weather's calm enough, and I can see, because then I want to see those big fish. And then if I see the big fish, I may sight fish them, or depending on their behavior, I may pull back and blind fish them. And I succeed a lot more when I do that. See, like at the tournament, when I found actually some good fish and I couldn't get them to bite because I overworked them, I overcasted at them while they were where they were could clearly see me. If I just let them settle down, drop their guard a little bit. And because I'm constantly casting at them, trying to literally at a certain point just upset them into biting my lure. And a couple times I actually got bit, but couldn't hook one. My daughter and son missed a few, had them almost boom, pull the pole real hard out the blue, like oh, and they miss it, because the fish probably had it the whole time. It was a little tough, right? So, but I think if I would have just pulled off and less tried to sight fish and did more of a field fish and blind, I would have caught a lot more. And then under those circumstances, like I said, I'm using, depending on water clarity, anything from a realistic light green, light brown type color down to something dark, especially if the water's dirty. And then I'm just traditional fishing slow, and I'm fishing up shallow because I know they're spawning. I know they're there somewhere. I can't see them. What's the use in even trying? So stop, don't cover water, don't fish fast. Because imagine if you can see them, and sometimes you need to cast 5-10 times to get that bass to bite. So pull off, spot lock, or fight against the wind, or whatever you have to do. Pull off far enough away where they can't see you, you can't see them. Cast up into a foot of water and just slowly work your lure back down, and do that over and over again. And you will catch fish, and sometimes many fish like that, and even big fish like that. But that's usually during those circumstances when during spawn. It's still during spawn, but the weather's not cooperating with us. So even though we know there's spawn, we know there's fish up shallow, the weather's not always perfect. The water clarity is not always clear. Things happen. The water comes up, rushing water comes in, rainwater comes in, wake boaters are out there, and the waves are smashing the shore, and then all the mud's coming out. But the fish are still going to be there, but now you can't see them. So what do? Cry, and you can do two things. You can go find a wind protected cove, a cut, an area out of the wind, out of the wakeboarder's reach, where you might be able to sight fish still. But if it's bad enough, you're probably not going to find many areas, and then it may be small, and you're putting all your eggs in that basket. So you can either do that, or you can trust that, find flats that have hard bottom, not a bunch of small rock for the fall in, not chunk rock either that's got too many crevices and not enough even spots. So if the bass were to bed, they could fall into cracks and crevices. So real craggly rocks, steep rock, bunch of little tiny rocks like this, a bunch of them, like bunch of pebbles and rock. They're not going to really want to be on that kind of bottom. Big chunk shell rock that's flat or spread out with hard dirt in between, hard dirt with some rock, or even just real fine rock with dirt, or just hard packed dirt by itself. Not a ton of grass. Unless there's dirt like circles in those grasses or blank spots, then they'll actually like to spawn up in that. But they'll spawn right at the end of the grass edge line. It just depends on how fast the lake's coming up, how quickly, all these different factors. But yeah, it's tough, spawning. I mean, fishing in general is just not always just a cakewalk, right? It's awesome though. Like if you look back on my videos, I've got a video where in that video we catch, I think I've got about 60 fish or 70 fish on video, but we caught like 130. I didn't record them all. There were just too many. There was a lot of dinks. There was even medium-sized ones that just didn't record. Some shots I thought I had the recording thing on, it wasn't on. But literally we counted, and I had over 100 and my daughter had 30. And so we may have done well over 130, maybe done 140, 150. I don't know. But I know that for every one fish she was catching, I was catching 4 or 5, and she caught 30. So it was insane how many fish we caught. And it was on a summer post-spawn day. A lot of the fish came out of Arnold Bay at Lake McClure, and we were just using Ned rigs, and they were getting bit on the way down. As soon as it hit the bottom, within 2 or 3 seconds of moving it, they were all over in that bay, like mad numbers everywhere, the whole shoreline from the point of Arnold Bay, all in the whole cove, all up near the waterfall, all the way to the other main point. And we just had the whole lake to ourselves because we were there on like a Monday through Friday type day, and we were just cruising the shoreline, just murking numbers, go all the way and then come all the way back. And then we fished a couple little areas like that and just smashed them. And then sometimes we go out there and we struggle to catch 5, we caught 4 during the Ed Lacey tournament. 3 nice ones. We couldn't get on them, made mistakes. It happens. So it sucks, but it's part of fishing and it's part of the learning experience too. I'm still that can be one of the biggest challenges when you've been fishing long enough is you start thinking you understand or know it all, or even if you do, you start putting yourself in these boxes and cages and circumstances where I'm going to throw this during this situation, I'm going to throw this during this, and it makes sense to you because that's what all the rules say. But a lot of times some of the biggest and best fishing trips and fish can be caught doing some unique or different things. When everybody else is catching 1 to 2 pounders, drop shotting, and they're catching 30, 40 fish a day, you might be able to go around the lake and chuck a crankbait or spinnerbait and only catch, 10 or 15, but all 3 to 5 pounders, being a whole different class of fish. Or throw a swim bait and only catch maybe 1 to 5 fish, right? But you're looking for those 5 right bites. Or you may only have 1 or 2, a 10 plus and a 5 or 6 or whatever, right? A bunch of big ones. So pick your poison. There's many different styles and ways of fishing. Tournament fishing is fun because sometimes you can say, I'm going to go chase that big one. I'm going to either go bed fishing and sight fish until I find a big old monster, or I'm going to chuck swim baits and spinner. I'm going to chuck all these big baits, and you come in and whiff it, and the tournament gets won off 11 pounds from some dude dangling a worm, right? That doesn't take too much skill. He made the right decisions, found the right spot, and then it executed when he had his opportunities, or she, right? So, that's the fun about it. You never know. And this last year and a half, I've been tournament fishing. I've came close to placing in the money and winning quite a few, but due to some mistakes like dumping fish, using the wrong rod when I was jig fishing and losing like all my fish. Like I lost like 3 out of 4, 3 out of 5 that I hooked. I was dumping 4 pounders, 5 pounders during nighttime tournaments when I was only 2 pounds away from winning in the first place, from getting a check. But I was literally dumping monsters and just having some struggles. So, I've been learning along the way, and those problems were because of the lures. The jigs that I were using were open hook. They're heavy. They had no weed guard. The hook sets I were using were too powerful. My line was fluoro, and even though it was strong 12 or 15, it was just no stretch. I was ripping giant holes in the fish's face. The action of my rod was too stiff a bit. When the fish jumped, it was causing my rod to do this, and then the lure was shaking too much in the fish's mouth. And because of the fluoro and no hook guard and how hard I was setting the hook, it's tearing these big holes, so those jigs were just flopping right out. I learned to do a little bit of a softer hook set, use mono or a shorter rod with a little bit. I was using a medium heavy, went down to a medium, and it made all the difference. I'm sticking them, thump, and just getting them in, thump, and getting them in. And I wasn't ripping too hard of a hole in their face. It was just making those decisions, those learning curve. It was tough. And I'm hoping to compete still and have some good luck and fish and have fun. But also one of the other things that I've been thinking about, which is why I just do my channel. I go fishing. I do my little reports. I tell people how the fishing's been for me. I don't act like I'm any better than anybody. I just try to help, right? So I try to share the love of fishing, entertain, and have you guys just, cracking up and having a good time with me when we have those fun nights. All those different things I try to hit. And I don't try to do weird stuff for views. I'm not one of those kind of guys, And so I enjoy doing these shows. But tournament fishing, I would love to do more of. But I've been thinking about it, and it's not anyone's fault. It's not your fault. It's not anyone else's fault if you've got a really good job or a really good money and you have a really good boat with really good electronics. If you got live scope, forward looking, you've got all this high-end technology where you can watch the fish, you can see them in front of you. So not only just being able to look down, you can look out and you can see that there's fish 15 or 20 feet this way. They're this deep or high off the bottom. You can actually see them coming in. You can watch your lure bouncing. You can see if you're turning the fish off or on. You can see as the fish, as it chases something like a spinnerbait or crankbait, uh, if you give it a pause, does it seem to make the fish more or less aggressive? If you get a couple jerks, what does it do? And then if you learn what you're doing to trigger them, then when you make more casts and you see fishes following them, you can then do what you did to trigger the bites before, and you can really, it's a game changer. And the bad part is this equipment. See, it's not like, so if you have $100,000 boat and I have a $10,000 boat, even if you get there a little faster than me, you know the lake has so many different points, spots, right? So there's so many different areas that these big fish can be in, and you may find where the monsters are at. That's half the battle, right? And that, right, and kudos to you. But there may be other big fish in other areas, or you just may really have the monsters, but I might be able to find the next class down, the sixes, and you're on a big school of monsters and I'm on a big school of the other monsters, just the next step down, but above everybody else, right? And the thing is, though, is these fish finders are becoming so advanced that it's cutting out the competitive and the skill, and almost making it where an average fisherman can now outfish a great fisherman. If the great fisherman doesn't have those electronics and gear, and the average fisherman does, but as long as he knows how to use them, okay, man, he can do some damage with that stuff. And the problem with it is the cost. So most people who have a decent job and have their life doing okay for themselves can afford some kind of beat up used bass boat, right? And we can all get out on the water and compete and have a great time. But when you got this gear that costs $5,000-$10,000, ghost motors, they're ultra quiet, and everything's paired in, front and back can be linked, big old giant screens, and you can see these fish actually in real time react to your lure. That's so much of an advantage over a guy who's using a traditional 3D and down scan or something, or even side scan. And it's just it almost sucks, but still, I'm not one of those sour grape dudes. I would still fish and have fun in them, but it statistically does take your chances of winning and lower them quite a bit. And it just really, it sucks because the prices of these things are not at a reasonable enough rate where the average fisherman can afford them. If it was just like, so say back in the days when the fish finder first came out, you're either one of those dudes that you fish by intuition and you just try to figure them out. But if you can afford this new fandangled fish finder, you can find schools of fish, you can find suspended fish, you can now do things that the other guy couldn't. But that technology quickly became affordable to where the average Joe could get that same technology. Now, fast forward a few years or even a little bit more, you have these guys in the real high-end boat, the guy in the low-end boat, and this guy's got a $2,000, $1,500 fish finder. This guy's got a $300 or $400 fish finder. There's big differences, but this guy with the cheap fish finder can still find those offshore fish, those schooling fish, can still up his game and has a decent fighting chance against the other guy. Skill plays a role, luck plays a role, finding these fish, and then still knowing how to catch them. But when you have this technology that's so advanced, it makes it to where you can go out and just cruise around, find them, and then just watch them. It's just so crazy. It doesn't guarantee you're going to win either, because sometimes you can focus too much on the fish finder and be overly concerned with it and not do enough fishing and do too much watching, while someone who doesn't have quite that technology is maybe spending more time fishing and actually catching numbers. Now, you may, in the end, after doing that many trips, learn how to use it better, more, and then start out fishing the other guy, but he still might have a decent chance at, let's say, winning in a tournament if you're kind of newer with your equipment or you don't pre-fish the lake enough. But still, it's just this technology is crazy. How's it going, Marco? Hello, Roadrunner. Comment on the outrageous new entrance fee at Don Pedro. Well, that'd be my pleasure. That's some bullshit. Let's go, Brandon. What the hell? That's all I know, man. Is gas prices are through the roof. Governments hiking up costs to get into their lakes. 35 damn dollars to get into Don Pedro. What you think? You got like double digit? You think you're like Falcon Lake or some Lake Fork or something? Like do you got some lunker program? Like this is California where all the tree huggers and hippies live, where we all care about the environment, supposedly, right? Well, what the hell? Where's all the programs for the monster fish? Where's all the the programs where you stock 5 and 10 pounders and you remove sickly or bad fish, or you have programs, limited slot limits to pull out certain size fish so other size fish can get bigger, where you stock certain things and you check on things, you set limitations and rules. Where's all the programs like Texas has to create 15-pound bass and 20-pound bass to be caught regularly by decent anglers, not ultra pros throwing $500 swim baits on $1,500 rods? You want me to get started? I'm gonna get started. I'll go on a rant. These goddamn fools, $35 to get into a lake, piss me off. That's why I guess you got to get a season pass, right? Damn, man, get me going. But yeah, $35 to get in, 20 for the boat, 15 for your car, man. And then you're talking $100 in your truck to get there and back, damn near. And then depending on your boat, another 50 to $100. Like just to go fun fishing's $250 now. That's like what it was to go fish in the Future Pro tournament with gas and everything. Man, everything's gotten out of control and insane. Tournaments have gotten more expensive. $200 buy-ins, 250 instead of 100, 120, where it was 50, 60 a piece. Even back in the Future Pro, it might have been, $100 max with all the options. It was $200 per team. Now you got them 230, 250, 300, even more. But it's like for just little amateur tournament track circuits. It's crazy. They're getting this every freaking way they can. But I understand because their costs are going up, right? So the people who run these joints, their prices are going up. So it's like, what the hell? Complaining about the new fee. Oh, everyone's complaining about it. Most people just aren't fishing as much. You go, Sam. Yep. Big T, you got 6 fish over 3 pounds this weekend. Nice. Well, where did you do that, if you don't mind my asking? I did really good like that at New Melones like a week and a half ago. And then at the Delta, I just caught a couple of monsters and a couple fish that were 3, and a couple of like 2s, or one 2, and then like one like 2.5, and one that was almost 3. So I had fun. Or am I tripping? Was it like a 2 and a change, 2 and 3/4, and then a 5 and not quite 5.5, a little over 5 1/4. So had a good time out at the Delta. I'm going to plan. Can you help me spread the word? Maybe if more people complain, they will bring it down to at least 20. I don't think they will, my guy. We can complain. We can start a petition, but they were 25 before with the boat and truck. I want to say it was 15 and 10. And so like McClure's 7 and 8, right? Or $15 to get in with a boat and truck. I'm hearing they're going to raise McClure to $20. So, I recommend you get a season pass if you're going to fish that lake enough. May I also recommend the Army Corps of Engineer pass? Then you can fish like Pine Flat. You can fish Hensley, Eastman. There's a bunch in Northern California you can fish that are all part of the Army Corps of Engineer lakes. One pass gets you in all of them. It's like $60 a year or some crazy insane mountain. There's like 20 something lakes in all of California, something like that it gets you into. But yeah, we can, I'll help you spread awareness. Get a hold of me on Facebook. We can make some posts. We don't want to be mean about it or vicious. I went on my little rant, but if you want to, you're going to win more flies with sugar than with shit, Sometimes with honey and sugar, you trap a little more few flies just being too angry and vitriol. So how you do it's a real question, the question, because you got to explain to them like, how is this going to affect fishing as far as turnout? How many people, maybe less? So let's say just for numbers, you use an even number like 10,000 or 100,000 people visit a year. Uh, and now that they go to 35, what is the projected loss? So if they do 100,000 and now they only do 50,000, by raising it, they may be losing money, and also hurting the communities that are struggling. You can plead to emotions, but that doesn't work very well with government and with industry, right? Unless you're I don't want to go there too much, but unless you're on the political left, right, you can burn cities down, riot and loot. And if you have a good cause for what you're doing, hey, it's all good. But then you can't have a restaurant open, everything had to be closed during the whole coup, right? Well, Costco and Walmart's could stay open, mom and pop shops had to close down. you know uh, Lakes were closing. It was the most craziest shit in the world the last year or two. So if anything, you see that certain emotions, if it politically motivates them or gives them like good PR. But if you go crying to them that like the average person in the Central Valley can't afford it, they don't care. They don't want to hear it. They don't give a shit. There's still all these rich, powerful people. There's still all these people with good, decent jobs that have their wake boats and their bass boats. That even though it's expensive, if they can afford $100,000 boat with $100,000 truck, with the live scope and with this and that, I mean, they'll bitch about the price increase in gas. They'll bitch about the cost to get into the lake. But to someone who makes 250, 300,000, 400,000 a year, even 150,000 a year when their homes are paid off, this and that, they got 10, 12 grand and money coming in a month. Maybe you lose three or four of it to taxes, sitting on 8 grand a month. And let's say you don't have too many bills, you're financially responsible with it, you've paid off your home or something, you're not in credit card debt. It's a lot of money to play with. And if now you've got to spend an extra 500, boo hoo. But if you're an average Joe, then yeah, this is going to affect you a lot, right? The gas prices are going to affect you, the fees to get into the lake are going to affect you. So this affects the whole fishing community. But there's still so much people that have money that they don't care. There's the restaurant out there. There's the restaurant on the top. There's all those houseboats out there. There's all the wake boaters. There's all the tournament guys. There's all the bass guys. There's all the locals that live around. So there's just too much money in that lake to listen to some people whining because they increased the prices when everything else has gone up. So I get you and I agree with you 100%. But it's how the hell do we get them to understand? So you got to figure out, are they going to lose money? And if they're not going to lose money, we're probably not going to win. You can cause a stink and a fuss, and if you can hit the emotional strings, you might. But let's put it this way: milk used to be 25 cents a gallon, or gasoline was 25 cents a gallon. Gold, the gold standard, blah blah blah. A car was 1,000. Guys got paid $1, $2 an hour. Like, why has the value of money increased, or why has things increased then? Why isn't milk still 25 cents a gallon? Why, even though I get increases in things like to that extent, right? Why are we still not paid a couple bucks an hour? Things have just exploded, right? And so when you look at that with this inflation, with everything we're dealing with, it's just everything costs way too much. And we all have Netflix subscriptions, or this subscription monthly, this, it's just, so the average Joe, this crap drains us real bad. But if you're well off, it doesn't quite as affect you as much. And unfortunately, or I guess fortunately, there's enough of them, I believe, that they're not going to do anything about the lake fees. And if they would, you would have to show that they would lose money. So like example is if they had 100,000 people go in at $25, or let's just say they all had boats, so 25 bucks, then they make X amount of millions, right? And then if now going to raise the price to $35. So let's say they're going to raise the price 10% or $10 more. So let's just say it's roughly a 30% increase in price. If they lose enough customers to offset that, then you can show it's financially actually going to hurt you. You're going to have less business to your restaurant, less business to your little tackle shops and stuff, less business to the communities around you, the gas stations and the tackle shops, because less people coming up to fish. You're going to have less revenue at the gate. If you can show that, then you might have a chance. But I mean, again, that's talking out my ass. I don't know if you can even quantify that if without being an employee or an insider, right? But being an average Joe, how do you prove anything? So, and like I said, in the end, they'll follow the numbers. So if people keep paying the 30 to get in, then they're not going to cry over a few people that stop, if that makes sense. So yeah, but I've heard you got to have so you might have got lucky or get by, or if you're disabled or retired, I don't know. But I've heard it's $100 and something for the boat, and then $100 and something for the truck. So you have to get 2 season passes. You have to get one for the car. So for example, you say it's 35 to get into Pedro, when in reality, it's it's like 20 for the boat, I think, and then 15 for the it's 20 for the truck and for the trailer and boat, and then it's 15 for the car. Like McClure, I want to say it's $8 for the day, right, for the vehicle, and then $7 to launch the boat, right, to use the boat launch. So McClure is $15 with your truck and boat. If you go in just with your truck, it's 8. So I think at McClure you have to do the same thing. You have to buy a season pass for your truck, and then you have to buy a season pass for your boat. But yeah, even if you don't camp, the thing is the same thing. So you're, unless you know somebody got lucky or you got a different rate if you're disabled or old, from what I understand, is I believe it's a season pass for the boat and then a season pass for the truck. And so Don Pedro, I heard, I think it's 200 and something bucks total or something to pay for both of them. So, but yeah, even then, that's what I would recommend, because hell, you go fishing 10 times, which is once a month. If you just go fishing once a month, your season pass pays for itself already. At 35 bucks a visit, you pay for your season pass in like 7 trips. So, yeah, you only got it for the boat. So technically you have to pay every time you go for your truck then. So you got your boat covered, but you have to pay for your truck or your in your campsite, right? So that's how it should be. I think, if I'm correct. But if we, like, say we weren't camping, we'd have to have a season pass for both our truck and if you're not camping and paying for a campsite for your vehicle, right? Because the campsite comes with one vehicle, and then I think in one extra. And then if you want to bring a third vehicle in, you have to pay for that one or something. No, you have to. I think, yeah, you have 2 vehicles, I think, at a campsite. And each lake rules are different, so don't quote me. You might have to pay for your second vehicle too. So it just depends. I forget. These guys can be sometimes really nice, and some of them are real sticklers, and just, they'll get you. But yeah, appreciate everybody. It's 9 o'clock, so I'm gonna go work. I got to get up at like 4 in the morning. So we'll see you guys Wednesday. Look for a couple of really good videos. There's a big old monster caught out the Delta. You're gonna watch me and my son catch a bunch of 3 and 4 pound monster spotted bass jumping and leaping out the water. Some of the greatest time ever. You'll see just an epic trip like that. You're gonna watch me, my son and daughter have an awesome time at the Ed Lacey Memorial Tournament. I've got part of the national anthem. I've got Cook and all them. I've got a lot of the guys. Got the blast off, and then we'll catch. I think there'll be 4 fish on video. The weigh-in won't be on video. There'll be an outro where I say goodnight and goodbye or whatever. but didn't get the weigh in because of the live well issue. So we've got 3, if not 4 videos coming out for you guys here in the next couple days. Members will get early access. Everyone else, you guys will see them soon. So thanks for watching. Smash that like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. Tight lines, everybody, and good luck if you get out there. Smack some fish.